In the village of Kante lived a young man named Olise. He was a lazy man that was married to a very beautiful and hardworking woman named Idote. Olise, despite being the first child of his parents, did not inherit any property after their death, as his father had vowed Olise would never get a share of his wealth due to his laziness. His wife, Idote, was the breadwinner of the family, doing menial jobs alongside her family, while Olise was given the prince lifestyle of lavishing Idote's hard work. One morning, as Idote prepared for a long day ahead, cooking and cleaning before dawn, Olise slept soundly in their humble hut. By the time Idote departed, Olise awoke late when the sun was already high in the sky. He ate heartily, paying no mind to the chores in the house, and ventured out with money he had taken the night before from Idote's bag, indulging in gambling with friends. Upon his return, accompanied by his friends, they devoured what little food Idote had prepared for their evening meal. As Idote returned that night, she was so hungry she didn't want to wash off before eating. She went straight to the kitchen and was met with an empty dirty pot. She went to comfort Olise, but he was passed out and smelled of liquor. Idote cried so hard that night, as tears of frustration streamed down her cheeks. She endured yet another night of empty promises, and slept hungry, drinking water to bed. This pattern of neglect and irresponsibility continued until one fateful day. As usual, after Idote went out to work, Olise decided to go on a stroll to check the bushmeat trap Idote had placed in her farm. He got to the trap and found a big rabbit trapped in the cage. Excited, he took it as he began to return home. Just then, he saw a suspicious-looking man who was covered from head to toe in a black cloth, putting down a pot which had a red cloth covering it. He dropped it while saying, "I no longer want what you give. Take them back and leave me alone." Olise, who was hiding behind some trees, watched the man till he was out of sight. After he was sure the man had left, he came out of his hiding place, dropping his bushmeat and picking up the pot. "What sort of pot could this be?" he asked aloud. Hurriedly picking it up, he quickly wrapped it in his cloth and took his bushmeat hurriedly home. Olise, who was known to always stop by at the liquor place to drink each time he was out, before returning home. But on this day, as he passed the liquor place, despite his friends calling him, he ignored them and hurried home to find out the contents of the strange pot. No matter how much he looked at the earthen pot, he could not decipher what was unique about the pot. He went out to roast the bushmeat and took it to the liquor place to make merry with his friends. Returning home, he encountered Idote, waiting anxiously. "Did you take money from my bag?" she inquired sharply. "Of course not," Olise replied defensively. Not long after he uttered this, he felt like he needed to sneeze. Covering his nose as he sneezed, a single 1,000 naira note came out of his mouth. Idote, who had already gone into the house upset, did not notice this. Olise did not understand what had happened, as he also did not realize it was from his mouth the money came out of. He thought it was from Idote's wrapper it fell off. He happily picked it up and also retired for bed. For days, Olise would pick random naira notes from his home or on the streets, but didn't know it was from him. He would pick them up with the intention to save, until one day, Olise had just returned from his lover's home. Her husband had been around for some time, which had prevented Olise from meeting up with her. As he got home, he began to sneeze furiously. As he sneezed, naira notes upon naira notes began to come out of his mouth. For hours, this continued. As the sun began to set, Olise had stopped dispensing money, but his room was filled with money. Despite this strange phenomenon that had just happened, he did not bother trying to understand it. He quickly arranged his money and went out to spend. After drinking bottle upon bottle, He asked the waitress to give everyone in the room as many bottles as they wanted. As he brought out his bundles to pay, he was met with blank papers. No matter how many notes he brought out, he was met with paper. Olise was beaten so much he returned home swollen that night. Despite the pain, Olise was only worried about the rest of the money he had kept. As he went to check them, they were still naira notes, and the paper from the liquor place had now transformed back to naira notes. Dote, who was watching Olise as he went from corner to corner in their hut, was confused at her husband's seriousness. For days each time, Olise would go out to spend the money and be met with blank papers once it was time to pay. One day, as he sat alone in his hut, watching the money which he could not spend, the daughter entered the house. Earlier than usual, surprising him, shocked at the huge bundles of money with her husband, she asked, "Where did you get this huge amount of money from?" Olise, surprised to see her, could not answer. The daughter continued, "Did you steal this money? Answer me," she asked, scared. "I worked hard and got the money," Olise began. Immediately he uttered this, he started to sneeze and money began to come out of his mouth, surprising him and the daughter. At that moment, it suddenly dawned on Olise that each time he sinned towards his wife, he would sneeze money. "Did you just dispense money from your mouth?" Dote asked as she began to move her back towards the door. Scared Olise had done a form of ritual. Just then, the two heard a voice from the earthen pots Olise had found in the forest. As they cautiously went close to the pots began to speak. "Only the perverted in heart can get rich, but only the pure in heart can spend the wealth." It went further to explaining sinning unlocks the money, but such an individual has to openly confess the wrongdoings that brought the money to be able to spend it and end the curse. As the longer the curse went, the more extreme his transformation into a working money dispenser would be. His confession had to be done in the open of the market square for all years to year. Realization dawned on Olise. His wealth was tainted by his mistreatment of his daughter and his selfish actions. Determined to right his wrongs, he stood in the village square with his bags filled with money and confessed his sins to the community. As he spoke, the money transformed back into ordinary paper, fluttering away on the breeze. The village learned a valuable lesson from Olise's tale. True wealth comes not from deceit or laziness, but from honest labor and kindness. Olise, humbled and changed by his experience, embraced a new path alongside the daughter, working diligently and supporting each other as equal partners. From that day on, the tale of the human ATM became a cautionary story in Enkay, reminding everyone that the pursuit of wealth should never come at the expense of one's integrity and compassion. Thanks for listening to this story, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please take your time to like, share, subscribe, and who knows, check out my other stories. You might like something. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Bye, bestie.